welcome to the Intuitively Wild podcast. I'm your host, Rachel Levine. Living intuitively wild is about coming back home to ourselves. Here we talk about how to live connected to ourselves, others, and nature, and make a commitment to radical authenticity, vulnerability, and acceptance. On this podcast, we delve into a wide range of topics that span the human experience. We peel back the layers and talk about the things that are often not talked about. This is a space for us all to walk and wander this path of life together. Let's dig into our roots and go deep. Hello. Before we start this episode, I wanted to put in a little note here that I recorded this 2 weeks ago before life got even more crazy and chaotic in the world and everything that's happening in Israel and Gaza really went down. So I don't reference it in this episode at all, but I think that the topic we are discussing is really relevant and important. And that is the topic of grappling with life's uncertainties and deciding to take care of ourselves and leaning into self-care more now than ever. And I really feel like that is what we are being called to do, because while that might feel unproductive or unimportant, it is the most important thing we can do, because if we are well resourced, we can figure out the best way for us to handle what is in front of us and to handle what is going on in the world, instead of being so exhausted and overstimulated and activated. And taking care of ourselves allows us to respond from a place of integrity and authenticity and alignment versus a place of activation and unconsciousness. So I hope that you find something really helpful and meaningful in this episode and connect to it. And I really hope that you are taking extra special care of yourself right now. All right, let's get into the episode. Hi, hello, welcome back to the Intuitively Wild podcast. Happy Wednesday. I hope you all are doing well and feeling connected to yourselves. I have been trying to record an episode for about an hour now, and it just wasn't flowing. And it just wasn't what was on my heart in this moment. So I decided to start fresh and just come on with no plan and see what comes out. I'm really a planner. I like to have my talking points and organized what I want to focus on and have a foundation for basically everything I do. So this is different for me, and we'll see how it goes. I have been feeling very up and down this week. And to be honest, the last few months, I think I'm in a weird season of my life, moving somewhere new, starting a business, and really entering a whole new chapter of my life. And it's really confusing. And I have felt quite overwhelmed more days than not. And I think that's for a lot of reasons. And I think a lot of people are experiencing overwhelm and anxiety and confusion and big shifts and changes. I know I'm not alone. And so I thought maybe someone would get something out of me voicing what is happening in my life and going on in my heart. I spent the majority of my last few years, my early to mid 20s, caught up in my eating disorder in treatment, caught up in trying to be perfect and chasing this illusion of perfection. And I feel like coming out the other side, to an extent, I now feel really behind in life. For a while, I had no capacity to form deep connections with people, no capacity to have a romantic relationship, no capacity to pursue my dreams or even really know what my dreams were. I didn't have the energy or the ability to start a career or really do all these things that we're told we're supposed to do when we graduate college. You know, have a career, make the money, fall in love, settle down, all these things. I always knew that that certain structure wouldn't be exactly my path, and I had no desire to really follow that exact path, but I do find myself often comparing myself to others, to people in my life, to people I see online, to this version of myself I felt I would be at this time in my life, or that I feel I should be. And it's really discouraging, and it's really frustrating, and it's really disheartening. I am not nearly as far along in my business as I would hope. I am not in a relationship and haven't been for quite some time. And I'm not where I want to be financially. I'm not where I don't feel settled. I don't feel grounded. I don't feel like I have it all figured out. And I don't know, something made Theo bark and it scared me, but we're back. What was I saying? I was saying that I have nothing figured out and I have no idea what I'm doing with my life. No, I feel like I'm behind, and I feel like I've already failed. Especially when you go online and you see all these young influencers doing all these things and all these people, you know, social media shows us all these images, and it can be hard not to compare yourself to that. And I have created stricter boundaries around social media and trying to lessen my time around that. But then I also feel like I have to do certain things online and show up in a certain way to grow my business. But I don't like marketing, and I'm not strategic in that way. Like, I don't want to have to think about doing certain things to come off as a certain image and to grow my platform. I just want to show up as myself and do what feels authentic and do what feels good in each moment and let it fall into place. And maybe that's too idealistic of me, but that's the only way I know how to live, is to live authentically. So a big part of it is social media, and I think we all struggle with that this day and age. And I don't have any of the answers to that other than trying to limit our time and be in the real world and talk with other people about our real problems. But I've woken up too many mornings recently with such anxiety clutching at my chest and constricting my throat and feeling so overwhelming and paralyzing that I don't know how to move through it. And I first want to have a little side note to say that none of this is a woe is me validation or attention seeking or needing any sort of help or someone to come rush in and give me advice and save me or just feel bad for me, whatever. That's the last thing I want. And that's a thought that keeps me from speaking about this and sharing more openly and vulnerably and in the moment in this way. I'm just sharing because it's what's on my heart. And I think that these kinds of shares can foster that connection. So that's where this is coming from. But back to what I was saying about my anxiety that has been quite peaked recently. It can bring up a lot of doubt and imposter syndrome because my whole business is built off of these tools that I study and believe in so deeply, and helping other people move through these tough moments and manage their anxiety and mental health struggles and take care of themselves. And yet I still really struggle with anxiety, and I still am in recovery, and I still have hard moments, and I have my tools and I know all the things, and sometimes I am not capable of giving myself what I need, and sometimes the tools don't help and the anxiety spirals anyway. And I think something that stopped me from and continues to stop me from feeling like I have the ability to help people and grow a successful business is the belief that I have to be fully healed and have it all figured out in order to do so. But I know that's not the truth. And another reason I'm grateful for human design and for knowing my human design is, and this is in my astrology chart as well, which is kind of cool, I heal more fully when I help others as I'm going through the process. And I've felt that to be true. I've really felt that to be true. When I am isolating and doing my own thing, I can convince myself that that's better for me. But really, my healing has happened the most when I'm connecting with others, when I'm working with others, when I'm talking to others, when I'm opening up to others, when they're opening up to me. And that's not true. That's not the case for everyone, but I think all of us can benefit from just opening up more and connecting more and sharing more and not caring how it's perceived or letting that stop us. I used to think that I wasn't a people pleaser at all and that I didn't care what anyone thought of me. And I used my ability to do all these things by myself and to go off the beaten path and to forge my own path and do all these different things as proof of that, when in actuality, me keeping people away was a form of people pleasing, because if people weren't around me, I didn't have to worry about it. If people weren't close and if I didn't have to show up for others, I didn't have to worry about what people would say of me, of what they would judge me as or perceive me as, and it just made things so much simpler. I've realized how much this fear of how people will perceive me holds me back still to this day, and I don't want it to anymore. And so I continue to push myself to do the hard thing and let myself be seen and show up, even though it's really scary and it's really uncomfortable, and it's so much easier not to. I also constantly have these conflicting feelings around on the one hand, wanting to have a extremely successful business that impacts so many people and helps so many people and provides for me to live the life how I want to and have freedom and all the things. And then to also want to disappear into the forest and not have to strive in that way. And these conflicting desires are constantly on my mind. And I hope my goal always is to kind of mesh the two together. And my hope is to build my life around embodying both. But it's hard. And I think we all have some sort of conflicting beliefs and desires because there's so many different layers to who we are and things that we want. And sometimes they aren't aligned with each other. I'm honestly really exhausted from seeing 5 tips to do this and 3 tips to be your healthiest self. And I mean, I do this too. I'm a culprit of this too. But I'm just tired of seeing things so simplified and packed into neat boxes and then shipped out to the world for everyone to fit into. Because that's not how it works. I'm constantly listening to podcasts from people who inspire me and reading books about things I want to do and learning from people who have done what I want to do. And it is really inspiring. And at the same time, sometimes it's just defeating because I'm not there and I don't see the path to get there. And it feels impossible. And some days I wake up and I don't feel this way at all. I feel like everything's possible and I have all the energy and all the hope and all the direction. But those days can often feel few and far between, especially starting my own business and caring about it so deeply and having no idea what I'm doing. And I think I'm trying to find the balance between sitting with all of this and learning to talk about it and connect with others over it, and also letting it move through me and not letting it spiral me down. Because we can get caught up in these loops and in these beliefs, and that only keeps us stuck. So then I come back full circle and I have to turn inwards more and I have to turn to my tools more and I have to take care of myself and trust myself and follow my own advice. So I think the rest of this podcast, I want to transition into that. I want to talk about self-care. And I think this is a good example of how we can really balance different energies and different ways of taking care of ourselves. I think for me, learning how to just let out my feelings and talk it out and speak from the heart is really important. And then moving forward with grounded intention. So let's all take a moment to transition. How are we doing? How are we feeling? I hope that we can all just take a moment to check in and really notice what's going on for ourselves. I know that I could use a check-in, and continuously having these check-ins has allowed me to even notice when I'm feeling off center and when I need to reground. So I think we all should take the time to just take a deep breath and ask ourselves, how am I doing? And notice the first word that comes to mind, usually that first instinct before we think anything else through is really trying to tell us a lot. So just noticing that. And this ties into the rest of what I want to focus this episode on, which is self-care. And before you roll your eyes or think that we're just going down that wellness trap, I want to assure you that that's not what we're going to be discussing. And I think that this discussion on self-care is really important, especially if you related to anything I just said, because I do think there's so much importance in moving through this whole cycle of our emotions and still knowing how to care for ourselves in a way that is true to us and being grounded and confident in that ability. So we don't get caught up in the external noise and get pulled down by our hard moments. So let's talk about self-care. Now, when you think of self-care, what is the first thing that comes to mind? I know a lot of people now think of self-care as this social media trend that it has become. Even my first thought often when I hear the word is face masks and social media pictures and put together morning routines. And I feel like self-care has become a trend. And while I think that can be good, taking care of yourself isn't something that should be trendy or done for social media or that needs to or should look pretty. In actuality, self-care is exactly what it says it is. It's taking care of yourself. And that is meant to be really simple. If we knew how to tune in and listen to our needs in each moment, it would be really simple to just take care of ourselves and provide for ourselves. But many things get in the way of that. We were never taught to do that. We were never taught to listen to our intuition and put ourselves and our needs first. So self-care has become a lot more complex and nuanced and layered than that. And we're going to dig deep into all of it today. Self-care looks and feels differently to me now than it used to. It used to mean something totally different. It used to hold a different weight and significance. My self-care used to be strict and ritualized, sometimes even performative. I had to be doing all the things, all the things that all the people were saying to make sure I hit all the boxes and was perfecting my self-care rituals. And I always said it was because I was taking care of myself and had this discipline and this is how I felt my best and showed up my best and behaved my best, when in actuality, that wasn't it at all. It was coming from a place of lack. It was coming from a place of insecurity. And honestly, it was coming from a place of self-hatred and a form of self-punishment. I felt I had to do all of these things because without them, I wasn't good enough. And I felt I had to check off every list that every wellness guru put out there, so no one could say I wasn't trying hard enough or no one could say I wasn't doing enough. And everyone could look at me like this perfect person who is doing all the things. I can really laugh at myself now because it's a trap. But go online or listen to a podcast and everyone is talking about all these wellness tips, how to biohack your system and the morning routine you need to do and the diet you need to have to optimize your wellness. And without these 5 things, you're not going to be your best self, etc., etc. I still fall into this trap and have to continuously remind myself that just because it works for someone else doesn't mean it will work for me. And I don't need to try everything and I don't need to do everything. And I have nothing to prove. Sometimes I'll hear someone talk about this new, I don't know, skincare product, let's say, that solved all their problems. And I feel like I need to try it, even though I absolutely don't. And they make you feel like if you don't try it, you're doing something wrong. And I see so many others fall into this trap, making self-care a form of self-harm or punishment or productivity, and another thing to check off their to-do list. And there was a time when basically my whole life was my quote unquote self-care. But it was also when I was really sick and unwell. So something doesn't add up there. But this definitely isn't everyone's pattern. I also notice a lot of people avoid self-care because they think they're not worthy or that they haven't earned it. They think they don't have the time or they lack the energy, or they're addicted to their dysregulated states and don't want to replace that chaos with calm. This is honestly one of the biggest patterns I see repeated with clients, friends, family. They're not able to self-soothe because replacing chaos with calm can be really scary. At first, it can feel in your body like more chaos. When we're used to living at one state of existence, even if it's unhealthy and dysregulated, it can feel activating and destabilizing to change that. We need to start establishing new habits and create new tools to calm ourselves when we're rewiring those patterns. And most importantly, we need to be able to call these patterns out and have enough care for ourselves to want to change them. A lot of people I connect with and observe fall into two camps. They either don't make the space for self-care and turn to their activation states over self-soothing, or they turn self-care into self-harm tactics. And the common theme between these two is abandoning ourselves and not caring for ourselves and what we truly need. Self-care is so individual. What is healthy for one person may be dangerous for another. As always, it comes back to our intuition and knowing ourselves and being honest. The people I notice who really know how to care for themselves don't fall into the trap of trends or the pressure to use self-care to be productive or the feeling of not enoughness. They are able to just tune into their needs and support themselves without any external factors getting in the way. But this is really hard, and those people honestly amaze me. I notice it most when I travel to more remote places, but that's a whole other topic. To me, self-care is choosing to show up for yourself and your needs no matter what. Self-care can be challenging. It's usually choosing to take care of yourself when you don't want to. It's choosing a new way of behaving, feeling, thinking when it would be much easier to do what you would normally do. It's saying no when you know you're probably going to disappoint someone, and saying yes when you're terrified and when it's the last thing you want to do. Self-care looks different for everyone and looks different for each of us at different times of our lives because our needs are constantly fluctuating. And that's why we have to continuously check in with ourselves, because what might be self-care for you in one moment won't serve you in the next. You have to be able to tune in and ask yourself, what would self-care look like to me right now? Is watching this TV show self-care? Is getting outside self-care? Is getting off my phone self-care? Is getting a massage self-care? Is having that hard conversation self-care? Is checking off my to-do list self-care? Is not checking off my to-do list self-care? Is moving my body self-care? Is not moving my body self-care? Sometimes we have the ability and need to plan a whole day of self-care or book a big trip or invest in a more expensive experience, which can be really beautiful, and I love those experiences. But the self-care that makes the most impact are the little things we do every day. I think we can be doing self-care at all moments because we can always lean in towards taking better care of ourselves. What can I do in this moment that would serve me better? Can I make a tea? Can I push a meeting back 5 minutes? Can I slow down? Can I work outside? When we get in the habit of taking care of ourselves in each moment, we can show up for our lives more fully and we won't feel as burnt out. And we will have less of those crisis moments where we need to take a whole mental health day or a whole mental health week or have a breakdown, which that's definitely been an experience I've had in my life. I continuously didn't take care of myself and ended up having a breakdown and having to really take the space to take care of myself. But if we are constantly doing those little things in each moment to better care for ourselves, those days will happen less and less. I don't like to think of self-care as all the wellness trends and habits I can add to my to-do list, but instead I like to reframe self-care as how can I best take care of myself, which sounds really simple and like they're the same thing, but in my head, it shifts the whole energy and it really brings a new focus for me. Because above all, self-care is choosing yourself. Self-care requires getting to know yourself and being able to listen to yourself. It is about being in your body so you can understand your needs and caring for yourself enough that you follow through. Sometimes my self-care is hiking, doing my yoga practices, and agreeing to do something I'm scared to do. And sometimes my self-care is watching TV, eating another snack, and saying no to people and opportunities 5 times in one day. But each day I check in with myself and try to be honest. Each day I try to show up as the person I'm working towards being. Each day I ask myself, how can I best take care of myself today? I know that this podcast episode is a little bit all over the place, but I really hope that it helped you in some way and impacted you positively, if only to show you that it's okay to show up imperfect. It's okay to voice what's on your mind and what's on your heart. For me, self-care today this episode was switching my plans and just seeing what happened and not stopping myself out of fear of how it will be perceived. And this is going to be a big challenge for me to release this episode. I'm going to restrain myself from editing it or deleting it and not releasing it because I think there's meaning in this. I think it's important for me to live in alignment with how I want the world to be and to practice not caring what people think and following what feels right to me. And I really hope that you will take that lead and do the same. I hope that you will check in with yourself. I hope that you will open up to someone. I hope that you will do whatever you need to do to take care of yourself. I would love to hear how you felt about this podcast. I am definitely open to any feedback, even if it's harsh. And I will see you guys next week. Thank you so much for being here. Thank you so much for joining me on this episode of Intuitively Wild, the podcast. I hope it helped deepen your connection to yourself, sparked some insights, and inspired you to live intuitively wild. If you enjoyed this podcast, it would mean so much to me if you would share it with others and leave a rating and review. And please reach out to me. I would love to connect with you. I will see you next time for more magic.